discussing the latest essay that we published, The Perils of Monetocracy. The Fed today is a culmination of expedient solutions for immediate problems that have taken a life of their own. I think this is a very concise and a pointy description of the problem. The Fed was not designed to be what it is today. We argue in this essay that the Federal Reserve is the single most important threat to Western civilization, liberal democracies, or to the three pillars that the United States and I think every other Western country, at least perceptionally, thinks that they're built on, which is liberty, prosperity, and fairness. Those three pillars cannot be pursued. Those three pillars are in danger by the Federal Reserve. So this is the argument. And the way we argue is we start with the history of the United States, how it started, in particular, why it is built on the pillars of liberty, prosperity, and fairness. To some extent, we argue that this wasn't also necessarily by design. It was just, it happened the way. In other words, liberty was pursued because the people could pursue liberty. We argue that things like free land, availability of fertile land, have been instrumental in developing a culture of freedom, a culture of prosperity, and a culture of fairness. We go on, we describe the establishment of the Federal Reserve, very importantly, the secret meetings in Jekyll Island, which I think are key to the symbolism of how controversial the Fed actually was and the establishment of the Fed. And despite of that, the Fed was able to proceed. We then go on and explain why this is so dangerous. We offer a tale, a fictitious tale of the Kingdom of Wessex. So we basically just go back in history and explain how the Kingdom of Wessex is built on, on liberty and checks and balances, and then somehow introduces paper money, and the whole thing collapses. Of course, this is a parody. We offer a solution. The solution is competition amongst states, competition amongst constituencies. We need experimentation. We then finish with the uncertainty principles of economics. We can also call it the uncertainty principle of political economy. This is an analogy to the uncertainty principle in physics, which states that you cannot precisely measure certain properties, for example, momentum and velocity. You can never precisely measure those. You can only get one, but then you can't get the other one. And we use this analogy for political economy, where we say you can never precisely achieve fairness, prosperity, and liberty at the same time. So what that means is that opens the door, that opens the possibility for innovation. Because if we had a precise ability to get there, then we would just, I don't know, it's a little bit like the inconsistency theorem of Gödel, right? The life wouldn't be as interesting. I think life is a lot more interesting if we know we can never get precise measures, and we can never achieve fairness, prosperity, and fairness at the same time. But what we can do is we can try, we can get better. And this is really the conclusion of the essay. This is a Nothing Wrong podcast. It's October 7, 2023. This is Krim Telco. Since the last update, we're up 5%. The market's up 2%. For the year, we're up 125%. The market is up 12.1%. We're outperforming by 112.9%. The Perils of Monetocracy is an essay that describes what the Fed is doing to our society. We argue, monetocracy, by the way, is a word that I have never heard it. It just means that it's an analogy to democracy and so on and so forth. But it's the money that, it's monetocracy. It's not the money in a sense that people with money rule. It is the people that control the money. They rule. And this is much worse than, let's say, the old accusations of capitalism, where, well, you have money and power, you rule. Well, at least you earn that money, at least you have a stake. But if you just control the money and you're an unelected bureaucrat that has that power, then maybe that's not such a good idea. This is the fundamental thesis. Monetocracy is a bad thing. So we start with the establishment of the United States, and we argue that liberty, prosperity, and fairness really are the pillars of this country. This country is built on those pillars, and we are descendants of a culture that was really entrenched in liberty, prosperity, and freedom, and fairness, excuse me. We argue that we go back, we use analogies such as conceived in Liberty by Mary Rothbard. So we use those analogies and his 5-tome history of the United States from pre-colonial all the way to today. The main argument we use there is that it was the space, it was the openness and the ability of people when they were suppressed to just move west and start a new life. The ability also by the colonialists to fight an army that was much stronger on paper but couldn't fight because of geography. So we use the analogy conceived in space instead of conceived in liberty, because it was really the space geographically, and of course also the space intellectually, that allowed the United States to flourish. The problem started in 1913 when the Fed was introduced. Now, the Fed was introduced for many reasons. I think America's Bank by Lowenstein is his book. The name, I forgot the first name. It's in the show notes. The Fed was not established to become a monetocracy. The Fed was not established to buy bonds of companies, save banks, start monetizing government debt, help the government create trillions and trillions in debt. Certainly, the Fed was not conceived to do that. The Fed was conceived first and foremost to be a backstop for Wall Street, an insurance for Wall Street. And you can argue, in particular, Paul Warburg, the instrumental driving force from the side of Wall Street that wanted this to happen. You can argue that Warburg was probably a good-natured man who just wanted a system that is less prone to booms and busts. I'm not sure about that. The book, America's Bank, pictures it a little bit different. There's a lot more self-interest. There's a lot more, well, I'm a Wall Street banker, and if I have a backstop, I can make more money kind of feeling there. But anyway, this is not a discussion of the establishment of the Fed and who is to blame and who isn't. It just happened. And I just want to note that it was very, very controversial. The reason it was controversial is because the opponents of the Federal Reserve, and they came from different angles. There were the agrarian states like, Oklahoma, etc. Then there were progressive Republicans who just didn't want to have too much central power. There were also people that just were afraid of corruption. So a lot of the criticisms of the establishment of the Fed actually were warranted. Nevertheless, the Fed gets established, and the main argument in this essay is that we have this toxic combination of an independent central bank. And independency actually should be a good thing, right? But if you really think it through, it's almost collateral damage, because you have independency, and then you have this Congress, the situation that we have on the political side of things, which is that we have checks and balances, right? No matter how corrupt our political system is, you're still exposed to accountability, checks and balances, and those sort of things. So if you now have an independent central bank, you might argue, well, that's a good thing. The central bank is just going to follow price stability and it's all good. Well, unfortunately, that's not what happened, because in 1978, we have another act is passed. I forgot the exact name, but the act introduces the dual mandate. And the dual mandate means that now we're pursuing price stability and full employment. And with that, we're really opening a Pandora's box now. And with that act, which was presided by President Carter, we now have a situation where basically any kind of reason can be used to write checks. We can say, I'm not going into detail here what that actually means in reality, because I don't have the actual facts. But again, we just look at the situation on the ground, which is we have 33 trillion in debt on the balance sheet of the Fed, and we have a huge deficit and so on and so forth. So monetization of government debt is absolutely, it's the thing du jour, it's what's happening, it's what everybody is basically accepting. And this is it's happening to us. Nobody wants it, but it's happening to us. It keeps happening to us. And it's because of this toxic relationship between the Fed and Congress. This is the fundamental reason why this is happening. And that's why, again, my main argument here is that we have expedient solutions for immediate problems that have taken a life of their own. This is really important. And now we have this toxic relationship between Congress and the Fed, and toxic in the sense that now we have Congress that wants to get things done, and then we have Fed that monetizes debt. Now, this is not happening from day one right away. This is happening gradually, and it takes from 1978 until 2023, which is almost 50 years, to get us to 33 trillion in debt. But now we're here. And I mentioned culmination, which implies that probably we are at peak Fed now, because this has to stop. We're seeing political movements actually on as we speak, of the Speaker of the House is being replaced and all that kind of stuff. The Speaker of the Senate. I'm not sure. Anyway, Kevin McCarthy. So there's a lot of opposition now against government spending. But then we have the expedient solutions. We had the pandemic. Now we have just this weekend, a breakout of a war in the Middle East between Israel and the Hamas. I am sure it's going to be another expedient solution where we just spend money on things and so on and so forth, and the Fed will monetize. As long as the Fed monetizes that, there is no stop to this. This is the fundamental problem. And again, it's the toxic relationship, which really, the Pandora's box that was open was a dual mandate. The dual mandate is the biggest problem here. And then the rest has followed suit. We have Ben Bernanke in 2008 starting to buy bonds. Then we have Yellen and Powell doing the same thing and buying even more bonds. So the monetization of that is going from government to corporates, actually. And that this is another massive problem that, of course, warrants its own episode and its own essay and everything. In order to illustrate how dramatic the situation is, we offer a tale. The tale, a fictional tale, is the Kingdom of Wessex, and the Kingdom of Wessex. And I'm not going to go into details, but it's a parody. It's supposed to explain in simple terms where we stand today, put a mirror into our face about an innocent Kingdom of Wessex, which is fighting the Vikings and blah, blah, blah. And then, somehow merchant bankers introduce paper money. The paper money really is very helpful in the beginning because it is an efficient form of economic transactions. But then, of course, somebody has the idea that maybe we can print a little bit more and then keep doing more. And, I kept doing a little bit more, and a little wouldn't do. And so I started doing more and more. Mr. Brownstone, Guns N' Roses. This is, in a nutshell, what's happening, what has been happening, and this is where we stand today. So we then offer the solution. So we don't just want to paint a negative situation here. We also want to offer solutions. And the solution that we offer is really competition. We say that, look, we have a setup. We have a federal setup already. We have a federal setup, which means that we are in a situation where we have entities which we call the states. So let's start with that. But actually, we argue for more competition between constituencies. So the constituency could be the state, it could be a city, it could be it could be a local, constituency. It's not clear what that is, but let's start with the states. So we have the states that are in competition with each other. We offer a scenario where we could have a centralist, socialist New England. We could have a libertarian Texas. We could have a even dictatorial Florida. We could have a wealthy socialism in California. We can have different constituencies that control their monetary and political economy, their monetary situation and their political economy. This is what we suggest. We believe that the only solution for the United States is actually to go in that direction. We cannot afford to keep centralizing and federalizing even more. This cannot go on like this. So we offer not just the competition is not just good to keep the purse tight. It's also good to experiment because, and this is how we end the essay. there is the uncertainty principle of political economy. So there is no right way. There's probably a perfect way, but no right way, because we can never precisely get liberty, fairness, and prosperity under one roof. That's the uncertainty principle. If you get a precise definition of fairness, you will definitely not have prosperity, and you will not have liberty. If you have a precise definition of liberty and you implement it, you will not have fairness and you will not have prosperity. And if you have the precise definition of prosperity, you won't have fairness and liberty. So it is not possible. And by the way, those are just the three pillars. You can add more. Some people might have, other ideas of what this country should be standing for. But again, this is just another argument actually for more competition. So we argue for more competition. We introduce the uncertainty principle to back it also fundamentally. So as a conclusion, the Perils of Monetocracy is a tale of a situation where expedient solutions to immediate problems have taken a life of their own. This is the fundamental problem. This is where the Fed is. This is where our financial situation is right now, our political situation. And this is why we have to find solutions to this particular problem of monetocracy that we live in. And we offer solutions, and the solution is to introduce more competition. Competition amongst constituencies. I grew up in Switzerland. This is a place where actually there is such a thing as competition. I would argue that this is the main reason for the prosperity of that country. And then I offer some theoretical foundation into why we can't pretend to know what the precise situation, let's say, what the precise politics should be. We can only get better. And the only way we can do that is through try and error, through experimentation, and competition does that. That's why we introduce the concept of competition amongst constituencies as a solution to the monetocracy that we are stuck in today. Thank you.